Sometimes all you need is a great story and cast of characters in order to make for a great action movie. It's when amazing things happen, such as enhancements in CGI and action sequences, where the real magic happens, as you end up with an action movie with heart. Terminator 2, Judgment Day. This is the Spanish version. Well, I mean, it's got Spanish all over the cover. It's still in English, but I can't stand that it has Spanish on the cover. It's just a gripe I have. Might have to get a different edition, but still, moving on. This premise could have easily failed if given to the wrong people. And thankfully, James Cameron returned, which, if you say that nowadays, people just laugh. The plot. Two beings sent back in time with different objectives. It revolves around a young boy. One's there to terminate, one's there to protect. Which one is it? Well, if you watched the trailer back in the 90s, or even now, or if you watch anything revolving around this movie, you know who is there to protect. But in case you haven't, I will not spoil it until I spoil it. Which means I'll give you a time code. Okay, fine. Spoilers! It's Arnold Schwarzenegger who's the protector. The T-800 is now a good guy. End spoilers. This is the most logical way to continue this series, and if you didn't see the trailers, like I said, it'll come as a total surprise. So, now, remember when I said in my previous review that when growing up, the Terminator was my favorite of the franchise? Well, that still stands. I'm gonna have to start off with my very few cons I have with this movie. Sometimes it drags, and for a 2.5-hour film, that can be detrimental. On the flip side, I never felt the first film dragged. Not as much as this film. However, when watching this film, every time something epic happens, it's jaw-dropping. There is good and bad to this, however. While the T-1000, played by Robert Patrick, who was previously in Die Hard 2, is amazing as a calm and approachable threat. He disappears for a great deal of time in the movie, though. I think this was done to give you the impression the characters are out of danger. Either that, or it makes us, the audience, feel his presence loom over the characters and story in general. Speaking of the characters, I felt Edward Furlong did okay as John Connor. The scene where he talks to Arnold Schwarzenegger about where he thinks his mom is going is a very rough sequence and unnatural. Which is weird, because I felt up until that point, the child actor did a really good job. She's gonna blow him away! But besides those complaints, plus one I will mention later, this film is classic. Everything from the action set pieces to the groundbreaking effects to the characters and surprises are all done to perfection. Let's start off with the story. Like I said, if you didn't see the trailers, the film's big twist would have shocked you back in 1991. But now that everyone and their grandmother knows the twist, it's kind of pointless not to talk about it. It's one of those twists that could have been very risky and even detrimental to the film. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if James Cameron and his team were biting their fingernails when doing the test screenings because of it. It hinged entirely on the fans' perspective of Arnold Schwarzenegger, as well as his character. Arnie barely ever played bad guys, so it is easy to see how this persona fit his archetype. Schwarzenegger just naturally slips back into the role, no problemo. With the story following a kid, it could have been a recipe for a disaster. However, Edward Furlong does a decent enough job as John Connor. He acts like a rebellious teenager would at the time. And it wasn't even uncommon to act rebellious around that time. He uses very 90s phrases, and it works while even creating some new ones. This is a very, very quotable film. Even the lines from the first movie are brought back in the sequel, where the people recall the lines, not the first one. Ask, "Oh, what's that line from? I'll be back." It's from Terminator 2. It's also from Terminator 1. It's a testament to how big of a deal this movie was, is, and always will be. Linda Hamilton returns as Sarah Connor, and she got in great shape for this movie. She's muscular, has a great physique, and takes no crap whatsoever. Dr. Silberman, played by Earl Bone, comes back as well. He was the psychiatrist in the first film who tried to treat Kyle Reese. Now his role has changed, and he has Sarah Connor in isolation. I always hated his character and hoped he would get taken out. Maybe he will in the third installment, because he's in that one too. I'll have to watch it sooner rather than later. The gore, the effects, there are some stabbings and fights between the machines that are hard-hitting. It's not a gore fest, but it was never intended to be. Remember when I said I had one more complaint? Well, that falls into some of the effects. You can tell the CGI was evolving through the post-production of this film. Some of the shots suffered due to that. However, even when they're subpar, they do still make for decent shots. For the rest of the CG, practical, and set effects, they are spot on. The intensity is revved up to 11, and we really feel it, especially with the soundtrack being implemented over the scenes of trucks driving off bridges to chase a kid on a moped. So let's get into that soundtrack, shall we? The motion picture soundtrack. Returning to compose in the franchise, Brad Fiedel had more time to compose a more fitting score. I still prefer the themes in the first film, but this definitely has a more epic and intense style to it. It also carries a lot of the themes from the first movie over to it, and I am sure glad that they keep on using them because they are awesome. This is a stellar sequel. While I prefer the first only by a slight margin, this is action and heart to the umpteenth degree. You cannot deny that the sequel is made more maturely than the first. James Cameron showed how his skills improved over the years and implemented them into this film. To most, this is the true end to the franchise. However, Dark Fate came out, and all I can say is, you'll always have these two epics to look back at in the sci-fi genre. Overall, I give Terminator 2 Judgment Day a 4.5 out of 5. Thank you all for watching, and I am Brian Gatto, the horror show host. Make sure to like my Facebook fan page and to support me on Patreon. Even $1 a month will help me go a long way. Also like, share, and comment on this video, as well as hit that notification bell. And as always, subscribe.